would you please, Fast Eddie, giving you an assignment right out of the gate this morning. Look up Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick. Say, please, William Fitzpatrick in Virginia. Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick. Anything you can find on him, I appreciate it. And good morning, and I welcome you in as we look live at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania this morning, kicking things off for this Tuesday edition of the Stigall Show. Our telephone number, 855-STIGALL. If you'd like to get in here today, and you can always find us online, whatever you need, whether it's the Rump Society, whether it is social media, whether it's the podcast, whatever. All resources you need are at chrisstigall.com. That's CHRISSTIGALL. I ask about Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick. Anything you see pop right off the top there, Ed? Anything? Just curiosity. You didn't know I was asking, so I'm not asking for a deep dive. Just anything you see?
Yeah. Actually, he went to St. Joseph's University.
Here in the area. Okay, here in the Philadelphia area. Yeah. Okay, very, very good.
Catholic University.
Politics?
Law clerk to Kent, Haddock. Nothing immediately. Hold on.
Okay. A federal judge on yesterday, in Virginia, has ordered that prosecutors turn over grand jury materials in the criminal case against James Comey after finding the government's handling of the case raises genuine issues of misconduct and could result in the charges against James Comey being dismissed. This is why I ask about Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick saying in his ruling that the type of relief Comey's lawyers are seeking is rarely granted, but that the record points to a disturbing pattern of profound investigative missteps that led to the FBI agent and prosecutor potentially undermining the integrity of the grand jury proceeding. Among the missteps the judge said he found while reviewing the grand jury proceedings in the case were statements made to the panel by the acting U.S. Attorney in the case, Lindsay Halligan, a former personal attorney to President Trump, who lacks prosecutorial experience, NBC throws in for good measure. Fitzpatrick said the court identified two statements by the prosecutor to the grand jurors that on their face appear to be fundamental misstatements of the law that could compromise the integrity of the grand jury process. I see. So William Fitzpatrick has determined that James Comey may be the victim of errant prosecution. Well, isn't that rich? This is a guy that made, now again, I know apples and oranges, these are two different cases, but let's just remember, as we have a judge now very concerned that the grand jury didn't quite render a just or complete verdict to make a case against James Comey, and now he wants a look under the hood, maybe toss the entire case. Let's just remember who James Comey is, among many things. He's the guy that knowingly lied before FISA courts to secure warrants to spy on American citizens, based on a complete lie that he knew was a lie, among many other things. A guy that absolved Hillary Clinton of her crimes before the Department of Justice could conclusively come to that on their own. He investigates her use of a private server and the destruction of private email and other things that was government property, and he comes out and says, but she didn't intend to, so no reasonable prosecutor would bring the case. This is a guy that all along the way, over years and years and years, has waded into things completely illegally and has never paid not a minute's worth of punishment for it. Never. In fact, he's written books off of it. He's tried to play some Boy Scout sympathetic figure. He's gone on cable news and the tour and the shells and the beach and the whole thing, and he's always been smug and he's always gotten away with it. And, of course, we always knew that ultimately this was going to wind up in the backyard of Washington, D.C., where everyone, and I assume Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick falls into this, Fast Eddie, is just one of many, 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 many Democrats in the judicial system of Virginia. True or false? Anything you see?
True. So he was appointed by Joe Biden in 2022.
Shocker.
So
I didn't even look it up. I saw this yesterday. I said, I'm just going to have a fun game live in the air. I could have looked it up last night. Sorry, I didn't mean to give you an assignment right out of the chute, but I just thought it'd be fun to play live on the air. I didn't even look. Truly, I didn't. You may not believe me, but a Biden-appointed judge just said yesterday, I don't think you have a credible case I think the grand jury was misled. I think we may just dismiss it. And I'll grant you, we almost never do this, but I might make an exception for old James, said Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick yesterday in Virginia. Judicial activism. It continues. It's pretty gross. Tennessee judge temporarily blocks National Guard deployment in Memphis. This just came down yesterday, siding with state and local lawmakers who argued that Governor Bill Lee had overstepped his constitutional authority in sending troops to the city. So a governor now no longer has authority in his own state to declare emergencies and get control of his cities, thanks to a Tennessee judge. Then there's this one. Judge threatens DHS program that lets states scrub non-citizens from its voter lists. A federal judge yesterday questioned the legality of allowing states to check their voting lists against Homeland Security's citizenship database, ruled that she can't shut the program down just yet. Judge Sukanan? I don't know, but let's just go with Sparkle. That's the first name of the judge. Now, again, I don't even have to continue reading to know exactly who Judge Sparkle was appointed by. Undoubtedly a Democrat. And oh, yes. In fact, the Washington Times quickly points out that Judge Sparkle is a Biden appointee. Delivered several verbal attacks on the DHS program, saying she is troubled by the new policy and doubts the lawfulness. So this is in just one day. And I've got more. I could do a full hour at least on judges over the last weeks. But this is just yesterday. A judge says, I might just throw out all charges against James Comey. Another judge says, I don't think the governor can get control of a major city in his own state and send in the National Guard. I don't like that. And another judge says, I don't think the Department of Homeland Security can check cross-reference citizenship with states to clean up their voter rolls. I don't like that either. Judge Sparkle. 3 judges, 1 day. Now, if you want my opinion on what the House of Representatives ought to be working to do, first item up for bids, start dealing with judicial activism from the bench. You have judges undermining this president and his administration, trying to get control, and governors, by the way, now you have governors being thwarted as the chief executives of their own states in trying to control. I mean, can you imagine that a governor now is being told he can't deploy his own or her own National Guard to control a situation? A judge can step in and stop a governor? These people in black robes are true tyrants. These are the real authoritarians. This is something that's got to be dealt with and reined in toot sweet. This is what I would like to see people spending more of their energy and time on, quite frankly. And I would also just say, this is also what Pam Bondi, and I'm not, let me be careful here, I'm not necessarily a Bondi enthusiast. I've been kind of clear about that. And I'm not defending everything that's coming out of DOJ and the FBI. But I am here to tell you that these people are uniquely up against it. And I'm not really sure what we do about it. And Ed, this is the harsh reality, and I know nobody wants to hear this because it sounds like I'm making excuses, and I'm not making excuses. But when you're talking about a DOJ that has to go out and investigate this stuff, make the case to prosecute this stuff, it oftentimes winds up in the backyards of judges like these. Now, these people at DOJ have got to be buttoned up, to put it another way. So they really, in terms of what they've been working with, Ed, they've just gotten to town. For all intents and purposes, these are people that have not been there quite a calendar year yet. And the gears of justice often grind slowly. And when you're trying to build a case for prosecution, particularly at a high level, and you're dealing with justices in the backyards of the DOJ, where many of these cases are going to be heard, who are already hostile to Pam Bondi and the FBI under Kash Patel and hostile to Donald Trump, you have to build a case that is so ironclad, even the biggest activist judge can't ignore it. I mean, you understand? That is what these people are up against. And again, I know that is not, I hear you and I get it, and I already hear people pounding out the angry emails at me. I am not excusing what has been a less than stellar or impressive rollout this year at DOJ by Pam Bondi. It hasn't been great, no doubt about that. But this is unique, Ed. These people are not, it's not like they can just saunter into any court and judges will rubber stamp them like they did for Biden. They're up against it. Got it? I mean, does everybody understand this?
They really are, and it makes Trump's time to appoint judges that much more crucial. Like, that has to get done immediately.
So everybody that says, why aren't charges being brought? Why don't we know more? Why aren't they saying more? These judges are a huge reason why. Just so you understand, they have to know that everything they've got is completely lined up and buttoned up and airtight and perfect to prosecute it. They don't have the luxury of counting on judges doing their bidding like Democrats do. That's just three. Judge Sparkle. Just hang on. Oh, yeah. No, believe me, it's everywhere. Just got an email this morning. Hey, Chris, don't forget, we just gave 3 crazy judges 10 more years on the bench here in Pennsylvania. They're not just appointed judges. We, the people, are electing crazy judges, too. No, that's exactly right. Kenneth Nielsen wants to know how many judges were appointed by Biden's auto pen. That's a pick, but it's a wonderful question, too. Glad to have you along, folks. Our telephone number, 855 Stigall, if you want to get in here today. Relief Factor, if you're trying to get out of pain, this is one of those products that I really couldn't more highly recommend to you. You know, we're proud that so many of our sponsors and friends on this show are just people that are trying to help things get better, whether it's pain or your circumstances. They're just helpful, and we're proud to partner with people like Relief Factor because not only are they trying to be helpful, they're trying to do it in an all-natural way. In the Maha era, that's so important, and the doctors that created all-natural Relief Factor made it so that you can feel very comfortable. This is not like a prescription drug or any narcotic or drug of any kind. This is an all-natural anti-inflammatory that after just 3 weeks, the doctors who made it believe you're going to notice a huge difference in your pain level. You may even notice, Lord willing, you will notice that your pain melts away entirely. That has been the case for thousands of people. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. You can read the online reviews for yourself. But for $19.95, less than $1 a day, I think it's certainly worth investigating, don't you? Go to ReliefFactor.com today, ReliefFactor.com, or call 800-4-RELIEF to order your 3-week quick start. And good luck to you. I hope it works as well for you as it has for thousands, my wife and some friends of mine included. ReliefFactor.com. Okay, just a few more, just to make my point. Not that you really need me to make my point, but I figure it's important that we continue to hammer this point while we're on it. This was last week. More stories that I just sat aside. I was like, I could do a whole judicial activism segment. Seems today's as good a day as any as we look at maybe a judge actually suggesting the rare step. Even this left-wing judge who admits out loud, it's very rare, almost this is never done, but I'm thinking of completely tossing the case against James Comey. And I want you braced for that. And so, Ed, what do we do, by the way? What do we do when we start to hear people on our side whose frustration is real, and I genuinely understand it, but when you scream and yell, we need justice. We need people to pay a price. People need to be punished for the things they did. And then this happens, and I'm bracing everyone for the potential that you have an activist judge just toss the charges against Comey and he walks again. Is that Donald Trump's fault?
No, it's not. No.
But yet we're going to hear it. And I don't want to frustrate people. I want everybody to properly assess the situation. This is not Donald Trump's doing that James Comey may not pay the price for what he's done.
It's not.
It's just not.
No, I know. You're right. Yeah.
And so who's responsible? I mean, how do we fix this? I mean, we have to have a conversation about how to fix it. But again, to hang it around the Trump administration's neck, I just don't think is the fair assessment. I understand that's what people do because the people in power are the ones that pay for the public sentiment and all of that. But the answer is, of course, the House of Representatives. Now, if you want to make a case why Republicans should be turned out in 2026, this is the one I'd hear. Not Epstein and all the other stupid sideshow stuff that people have been talking about. We have a legitimate judicial crisis on our hands in this country. You want to talk about punishing Republicans in 2026? You want to talk about this past election and why Republicans didn't fare well? While that wasn't the issue in those particular cases a couple of weeks ago, I will absolutely hear the case that if this House of Representatives is not bringing justice on some of these activist judges, that is a real problem. They must use their authority. The Constitution expressly allows them to rein these judges in, and they should. Over 600 illegal aliens were awarded $112 million after a New York jury, and signed off by a judge, found a county liable for unlawful ICE detentions. $112 million to illegals. A judge has adopted a Utah congressional map. I think I did tell you about this one last week, that creates a Democrat-leaning district. A judge just stepped in and stopped the Utah legislature from drawing districts. Hundreds detained by immigration agents in Midway blitz could be released after judge's order. Federal judge just said, release hundreds of migrants. I don't like the way they were handled. This is an issue. This is a real issue. You can talk about Epstein all you want, but if we don't rein in these activists in black robes, we don't have much of a country anyway. More in a minute. A couple of weeks ago, I had this story from Axios about Todd Blanche, who is the U.S. Deputy Attorney General. Axios didn't like this, of course. They wrote it in a negative way, but I kept it aside for just such a day as this, since I'm on a roll about judicial activism. Todd Blanche urged young lawyers to join the administration's war against rogue activist judges. Well, harumph. Thank you, Todd Blanche. Somebody's out there saying it. His stark language exposed how the Trump-aligned Justice Department, beg your pardon, Axios? Trump-aligned Justice Department, as opposed to? Would you like to give me the alternative to the Trump-aligned Justice Department? You're not going to say with a straight face that it was by the book Justice Department until Trump took the office. Surely you're not. But anyway, his stark language exposed how the Trump-aligned Justice Department treats the judiciary. They treat it less as an independent branch of government and more as an adversary to be fought. Well, for hell's bells, yes, it's an adversary. Axios, I just read you the stories, multiple stories. These judges see themselves as adversaries. How do I know? In this same story, they highlight a guy called Judge Mark Wolf, who a couple of weeks ago, he's a U.S. District Judge. His name is Mark Wolf of Massachusetts, a former prosecutor appointed to the bench by Ronald Reagan. So he's probably 1,000 years old. I don't know that for a fact, or maybe he was a very, very young punk, but you can bet he was a leftist in Massachusetts. Remember, the politics of judicial appointments, even under Republicans, this is really important to remember. When you read about judges and you see Biden appointee, Obama appointee, Clinton appointee, you're like, okay, well, that's a given. They can be as liberal as they want without apology, and that's going to be fine. When you read that a judge has taken a position against Trump and they are a Trump appointee or a Bush appointee or a Reagan appointee, and you say, but Chris, those are Republican judges. Why would they? Always remember where they've been appointed. And when they've got to meet the confirmation vote of the Senate, remember the Senate is involved, and the home state senators are often involved in shepherding the nominations of these judges through confirmation process, which means what? In Massachusetts, for instance, when was the last time Massachusetts sniffed a Republican? Romney? I don't know. When was the last Republican senator from Massachusetts? I have no idea. So anyway, this guy, Judge Mark Wolf of Massachusetts, he steps down, hung up his robe publicly to push back against the Trump administration. Isn't that funny? Because earlier in the story, Axios says that Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, is using language that exposes how the Trump administration sees the judiciary as not an independent branch of government, but more as an adversary to be fought. But when a district judge steps down and says, I'm hanging up my robe so I can publicly push back against Trump, that's not considered adversarial. That's just mom and apple pie, his American duty. I mean, it's not even, not to whine about fairness, but this isn't even a fair portrayal of what's going on. Let's just at least be honest. The judiciary is packed full of left-wing activists with the power of a black robe. And they are going to war to do battles that the Democrat Party cannot win on their own because they don't control Congress. Blanche saying a couple of weeks ago, we need you because it is a war and it's something we will not win unless we keep on fighting. He was speaking at the annual Federalist Society conference. Again, this is a couple weeks old, this story. I just kept it around for just such a day. He said the Justice Department's lawyers are bouncing around this country fighting these activist judges who he said are more political and certainly as political as the most liberal governor or district attorney. Blanche said there were, quote, a group of judges that are repeat players. Yes, which is why you have Democrats judge shopping and constantly trying to find sympathetic judicial ears to hear cases. Let's see. Axios goes on to say that this guy, Wolf in Massachusetts, who stepped down to fight against the Trump administration, accused Trump of using the law for partisan purposes and said the White House's assault on the rule of law is so deeply disturbing to me that I feel compelled to speak out. Silence for me is now intolerable. Oh, how heroic. The Trump administration has been locked in a persistent battle with courts since early in his second term and has labeled judges who stymie Trump's agenda as activist, rogue, and deranged. Well, I don't know about deranged, but activists and rogue they certainly are. Who the hell steps in to the James Comey case and says we may just throw the whole thing out because I don't like the way the case was made to the grand jury? The judge even said this is almost never done, but in this instance, I think I'm going to step in and maybe I'm going to do this. Lawmakers have put forward efforts to oust judges who've ruled against Trump from the bench, including U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, who absolutely deserves to be tossed. How's that even in question? This is a guy that literally ordered AT&T to not notify sitting United States senators that they were being surveilled, which by law they must do. One of his many egregious actions, this James Boasberg. Or John McConnell of Rhode Island, who last week ordered the administration to release full funding of SNAP benefits in November. Again, that was another activist judge ordering the Trump administration, so activist, in fact, that even Justice What is a Woman at the Supreme Court said, whoa, kids. Even that wacko. The most liberal lunatic doesn't even know what a woman is. Newest appointee to the Supreme Court stepped in and said these people cannot order the president to pay SNAP benefits when the government is shut down. That's too far, said the looniest liberal on the Supreme Court. That's how crazy some of these activist judges have become, lest you need the case be made any further. Federal district judges have blocked a number of Trump's sweeping policy goals with injunctions and restraining orders. But the Trump administration has also been accused of openly defying court orders, with MAGA world egging them on. And a Supreme Court ruling in June restricted federal courts' power to issue nationwide injunctions freezing federal policies. Well, that's not a small matter. You probably ought to lead with that, Axios. I love how they tuck that. And the Supreme Court technically said these judges don't have the authority they think they do. But we're just going to frame it as Trump continues to defy the court. No, a Supreme Court actually said you can't just issue sweeping nationwide injunctions and stymie the executive branch. That can't work that way. The Supreme Court weighed in on that. And by the way, the Supreme Court's not done. They're going to hear a case now challenging Trump's border turnback policies, too. The Supreme Court saying yesterday they're going to hear a case asking where the U.S. border begins. Folks, I'm also going to, yesterday, if you're a harumper, you read me make the case, the constitutional case for tariffs. This Supreme Court is holding some really critically important issues in front of it right now. Thankfully, they have stepped in, and for their part, they have told these federal-level judges you cannot issue nationwide injunctions and just stop the executive branch from doing anything it wants or needs to do by law. Similarly, the Supreme Court is now going to hear, as we know, whether the president can use tariffs, and I believe that the president can. And I make the constitutional case for it at the Harum Society yesterday. I'll share a little more of this with you later in the show. Probably going to send it over to Town Hall, too. People need to read it, since I know there are many, many people listening to this program now getting their ideas, their show prep, and even their public arguments. And that's fine. As long as good ideas are getting out there, I don't need the credit. I think we all know the truth. But anyway, the Supreme Court is literally going to have a discussion about whether people in Mexico can claim asylum protections before they even cross the border. Where does the U.S. border begin? Is a discussion the Supreme Court has to take up. It's nuts. I didn't want to rush this story. Let me revisit it. Yes, I'm beating a dead horse, but it's important. The Supreme Court said yesterday they're going to hear a case asking where the border begins. At issue is a previous Trump administration policy to turn back migrants who show up at border crossings demanding asylum. A lower appeals court ruled that they were, quote, on the United States doorstep, and that border officers could not block them from entering the country and lodging their asylum claims. The Trump administration urged the Supreme Court to take this case, arguing that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and this decision makes a mockery of the law granting asylum rights only to those who arrive in the United States. An ordinary English speaker who would not use the phrase arrives in the United States to describe someone who is stopped in Mexico, said the Solicitor General. Andrew Arthur, former immigration judge and congressional staffer who helped write the immigration law, said the case tests whether the right to claim asylum trumps the rest of immigration law. Asylum was a loophole to regular immigration law that helped fuel the Biden border surge, allowing millions of migrants to be caught and released into the United States from 2001 to 2024. Mr. Arthur said this is an important case because it gets to the issue of whether asylum law controls everything with respect to people who come into the United States. Attorneys for an immigrants' right group that led the lawsuit asked the justices to leave the appeals court decision in place. Otherwise, they said migrants seeking to reach the United States would be stranded in perilous conditions. The issue before the court is whether non-citizens seeking safety at ports of entry along the southern border have a legal right to apply for asylum in the United States. The government's turnback policy was an illegal scheme to circumvent these requirements by physically blocking asylum seekers arriving at ports of entry and preventing them from crossing the border to seek protection. So what have we here? People that are here in the country claiming asylum versus people that just show up and go, asylum! And we're supposed to let them in because they shout asylum. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said, no, you got to let everybody in. Trump and his attorneys say, no, that's not the way it's going to go. And border enforcement agents turn people away at the border. No. So the Supreme Court is going to hear, where does the border begin? Because the Ninth Circuit said the border is just kind of wherever. If somebody just shows up somewhere and says asylum, we just got to take them in. And the Trump administration is powerless to stop it. I mean, I'm sorry, my head is going to explode. A judge is threatening the Department of Homeland Security, threatening them to stop, trying to force them to stop coordinating with states to keep non-citizens from voting. Questioning the legality of allowing states to check their voting lists against HHS's citizenship database. We have courts and judges in this country that now no longer want to acknowledge what our borders are and who should even be allowed to vote. We have judges that say governors are not allowed to protect their own cities with their own National Guards. 50 governors are in charge of their own National Guard units. And they have the authority, the constitutional authority, to deploy their National Guard units within their own state boundaries for certain. That's not even in question, and now all of a sudden it is. Now you have a Tennessee judge saying that the governor there can't control Memphis? This is madness. People in black robes that you and I do not elect now have more authority and more control than any of this imagined fascism from the Trump administration. All of these people screaming that Trump's a fascist and Trump's a dictator, they should be looking at the people in black robes in this country and sounding that alarm. Because I guarantee you, the president wishes he had the authority that these judges pretend they have. More in a minute. Good to be with you, folks. I was just telling Fast Eddie during the break that now that the birds are soaring in the NFL, I told him, get ready, because now you're going to hear, the Eagles are getting all the calls. The refs have fixed the game. I said, that's your punishment for when your team starts to do well out there. The refs get all the flag. The refs are helping the team win the day. Anyway, good to be with you, folks. Welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Stigall Show. Coming up, this Matthew Crooks story in Butler, Pennsylvania, the guy that tried to murder the President of the United States. It's a very, very interesting and detailed story, what's going on. You know, we've been talking about judicial activism this morning, but there's quite a bit to know about him. And there seems to be a great debate about what the FBI knows and doesn't know and what this current Trump administration knows and doesn't know.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.